The brass shell casing hit the concrete floor with a metallic ping, echoing through the sudden silence of the Blackwater Military Academy's firing range. 25 perfect bullseyes stared back at them from the target downrange, each shot placed with surgical precision in a grouping so tight you could cover it with a silver dollar. Commander Hayes lowered his binoculars, his weathered face pale with disbelief. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." The woman in the simple white pharmacist coat stood motionless at the firing line, the smoking pistol still in her steady hands. Around her, 200 of the Academy's finest cadets, instructors, and military brass stood in stunned silence. Not one of them had expected this outcome when they'd challenged the just of Pharmacist to prove herself. Her name was Emma Richardson, and 5 minutes ago they had been laughing at her. Now nobody was laughing. 3 weeks earlier, Emma Richardson pushed through the heavy glass doors of Richardson Family Pharmacy in downtown Millbrook, Virginia, the same way she had every morning for the past 4 years. The familiar chime of the entrance bell announced her arrival to the empty store, and she flipped the sign from closed to open with practiced efficiency. At 28, Emma had inherited more than just the family business when her grandfather passed away. She'd inherited his reputation as the town's reliable pill counter, the friendly face behind the counter who always had a kind word and knew everyone's medical history by heart. What the townspeople didn't know was that Emma Richardson had graduated summa cum laude from Johns Hopkins with a doctorate in pharmacology, had turned down lucrative positions at major pharmaceutical companies, and possessed a photographic memory that could recall every drug interaction, dosage, and chemical compound she'd ever studied. They also didn't know about the gun safe hidden in her apartment, or the collection of competition trophies gathering dust in her closet. "Morning, Emma," called out Mrs. Henderson as she shuffled through the door, clutching her prescription bottle. "Got my blood pressure pills ready?" "Of course, Mrs. Henderson, right here. And I've included an information sheet about that new medication Dr. Wilson prescribed. Make sure you take it with food." Emma handed over the small white bag with a warm smile, the same smile she'd perfected over years of customer service. Mrs. Henderson peered at her suspiciously. "You sure you know what you're doing, honey? You look awfully young to be handling all these serious medications." Emma's smile never wavered, though something flickered behind her green eyes. "I've been doing this for 4 years, Mrs. Henderson. Your prescription is perfectly safe." As the elderly woman left, muttering something about young people these days, Emma returned to her morning routine of inventory and preparation. The Richardson Family Pharmacy occupied a narrow storefront between Murphy's Hardware and Chung's Chinese restaurant on Main Street. 3 generations of Richardsons had served this community, and Emma was determined to continue that legacy, even if it meant enduring the constant assumption that she was just a glorified cashier who counted pills. The morning rush brought its usual parade of customers, each interaction following a familiar pattern. They'd approach the counter with barely concealed doubt, question her competence, then leave grudgingly satisfied when she provided exactly what they needed along with expert medical advice they didn't expect from someone they perceived as just a pharmacist. Around 11 o'clock, the bell chimed again, and Emma looked up to see a man in expensive navy suit examining the vitamin display near the front of the store. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and the kind of confident bearing that suggested military training. Despite the civilian clothes, something about his posture screamed authority. "Can I help you find something?" Emma asked, stepping out from behind the counter. The man turned, and she found herself looking into sharp gray eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her appearance in a single glance. "Actually, yes. I'm looking for someone who knows about pharmaceutical interactions with military-grade performance enhancers." Emma raised an eyebrow. That's a very specific request. Are you active in the military? Something like that. He extended his hand. Colonel Marcus Webb, Blackwater Military Academy. I'm the Academy's Medical Oversight Coordinator. Emma shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way his eyes never left hers. Emma Richardson. I own this pharmacy. What kind of performance enhancers are we talking about? Cognitive enhancers, reaction time boosters, that sort of thing. We're updating our medical protocols and need someone with real expertise, not just someone reading from a manual. Colonel Webb glanced around the small pharmacy with barely concealed skepticism. Though I'm not sure this is quite what I had in mind. The dismissive tone wasn't new to Emma, but something about this particular instance irritated her more than usual. I have a doctorate in pharmacology from Johns Hopkins, Colonel. I'm quite capable of discussing advanced pharmaceutical applications, regardless of where my office is located. Colonel Webb's expression shifted slightly, showing the first hint of interest. Johns Hopkins? What's someone with those credentials doing running a small-town pharmacy? Family business. Sometimes we choose duty over ambition. Emma crossed her arms. Now, did you want to discuss those interactions, or were you just window shopping? For the next 30 minutes, Emma found herself in the most intellectually stimulating conversation she'd had in months. Colonel Webb's questions were precise and challenging, covering everything from nootropic compounds to the physiological effects of combat stimulants. Emma answered each query with increasing detail, drawing on knowledge that went far beyond what any typical pharmacist would possess. Impressive, Colonel Webb admitted when they finished. You clearly know your field. We're actually hosting a medical symposium at the Academy next month, bringing together military doctors, researchers, pharmaceutical experts. We could use someone with your expertise. Emma felt a flutter of excitement at the prospect of engaging with peers who wouldn't question her qualifications based on her appearance or location. That sounds interesting. What would be expected of participants? Presentations, case studies, demonstrations of practical applications. It's a competitive environment. Only the best get invited to participate fully. Colonel Webb pulled out a business card. The symposium runs for a week. If you're interested, contact my office. After he left, Emma stared at the card for a long moment. Dr. Emma Richardson, Johns Hopkins graduate, pharmaceutical expert, felt a familiar stirring of ambition she'd thought she'd buried when she took over the family business. But Emma Richardson, small-town pharmacist, knew exactly what would happen if she showed up at a military academy full of doctors and researchers. They'd take one look at her, dismiss her as just another pharmacist playing above her league, and spend the entire week treating her like she didn't belong. The afternoon brought its usual steady stream of customers, each interaction reinforcing the same pattern. Mr. Collins questioned whether she understood his heart medication properly. Young Sarah Martinez asked if there was a real pharmacist available to explain her birth control prescription. Even Tommy Foster, barely 18 and picking up acne medication, seemed to doubt her competence. By closing time, Emma had made her decision. She locked the front door and pulled out Colonel Webb's business card. The Blackwater Military Academy had a reputation as one of the most prestigious military training institutions in the country. Their medical symposium would attract the best minds in military medicine and pharmaceutical research. It would be exactly the kind of intellectual challenge she'd been craving. It would also be exactly the kind of environment where she'd be judged, dismissed, and underestimated from the moment she walked through the door. Emma smiled grimly and reached for her phone. She'd spent 4 years being underestimated in Millbrook. What was one more week? The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Blackwater Academy Medical Division. This is Dr. Emma Richardson. I'd like to register for next month's medical symposium. One moment, please. A pause then. Dr. Richardson, I show that Colonel Webb flagged your file for priority registration. You're listed as a pharmaceutical specialist? That's correct. Excellent. Just to confirm, you understand this is a full participation symposium? All attendees are expected to demonstrate practical applications of their expertise, not just attend lectures. Emma thought about the gun safe in her apartment, about the trophies in her closet, about all the assumptions people made when they looked at her. I understand completely. I'm looking forward to showing exactly what I'm capable of. After ending the call, Emma walked to her apartment above the pharmacy and opened the closet she rarely visited anymore. Behind the winter coats and storage boxes sat a small shrine to another life, dozens of marksmanship trophies, competition medals, and certificates from her college shooting team days. In the center, a framed photo showed a younger Emma in shooting gear, holding a pistol with the confident grip of someone who'd never missed a target that mattered. She'd given up competitive shooting when she took over the pharmacy, telling herself it was just a hobby that didn't fit her new life. But as she looked at those trophies now, Emma realized she'd given up more than just a hobby. She'd given up the one arena where her skills spoke louder than other people's assumptions. Next month, at the Blackwater Military Academy, she'd be just another pharmaceutical expert trying to prove her worth among military doctors and researchers. They'd see her small-town pharmacy credentials and immediately slot her into their mental category of not quite qualified. Emma picked up one of her old trophies: first place in the National Collegiate Shooting Championship, Precision Pistol Division. The medal was cool against her palm, but the memory of that victory still burned bright. Maybe it was time to remind people that there was more than one way to demonstrate precision under pressure. Maybe it was time to show them that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. Emma Richardson, small-town pharmacist, was about to become someone else entirely. And the Blackwater Military Academy had no idea what was coming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Blackwater Military Academy rose from the Virginia hills like a fortress of glass and steel, its imposing buildings connected by covered walkways that spoke of military efficiency and no-nonsense functionality. Emma Richardson pulled her modest Honda Civic into the visitor parking area, surrounded by luxury sedans, military vehicles, and cars that cost more than her pharmacy's annual revenue. She sat in her car for a moment, watching other symposium attendees make their way toward the main building. Men and women in expensive suits, military uniforms, and lab coats moved with the confident stride of people accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. Emma smoothed down her simple black blazer, her best professional outfit, and grabbed her briefcase containing research papers she'd spent weeks preparing. The registration desk was managed by a crisp, young lieutenant who barely looked up as Emma approached. Name: Dr. Emma Richardson, Richardson Family Pharmacy. The lieutenant's fingers paused over her tablet. Richardson Family. I'm sorry, I don't see any major pharmaceutical companies under that name. Are you perhaps representing a larger organization? No. I'm here on my own credentials. Colonel Webb invited me personally. A slight frown crossed the lieutenant's face as she scrolled through her screen. Oh, here you are. You're listed under Community Pharmacy Specialist. The way she said it made it sound like a consolation prize. Your badge and materials are in this packet. The opening session begins in 30 minutes in Auditorium A. Emma clipped on her badge, noting how it differed from the others she'd seen. While most attendees wore badges identifying them as Dr. Smith, Harvard Medical, or Dr. Johnson, Pfizer Research Division, hers simply read, Dr. Richardson, Community Pharmacy. Even the badge seemed designed to minimize her credentials. The main auditorium buzzed with conversation as Emma found a seat near the back. Around her, attendees networked with the easy familiarity of people who moved in the same professional circles. She caught fragments of conversations about clinical trials, research grants, and academic appointments at prestigious institutions. Ladies, And gentlemen, Colonel Webb's voice cut through the chatter as he took the podium. Welcome to the Blackwater Medical Symposium. Over the next week, we'll be exploring cutting-edge developments in military medicine, pharmaceutical applications, and battlefield medical technology. Emma straightened in her seat, her excitement building despite the lukewarm reception she'd received so far. This year's symposium features several unique elements, Colonel Webb continued. In addition to our standard presentations and workshops, we'll be conducting practical demonstrations to test real-world application of theoretical knowledge. After all, in military medicine, theory must translate to results under pressure. A murmur of interest rippled through the audience. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Our first practical challenge will take place tomorrow at the Academy's Medical Simulation Center. Teams will be presented with complex pharmaceutical scenarios requiring rapid decision-making and precise execution. Consider it a chance to prove that your expertise extends beyond academic theory. After the opening session, Emma made her way to the designated networking reception in the Academy's Officers Club. The room was elegant in the way that only military institutions could achieve: polished wood, brass fixtures, and portraits of distinguished officers watching over the proceedings. Emma approached the bar and ordered a club soda, then turned to survey the room. Clusters of attendees had formed naturally around the most prominent figures: department heads from major medical schools, lead researchers from pharmaceutical giants, military medical officers with impressive rank insignia. "You look a little lost," a voice said beside her. Emma turned to find a woman about her own age with short auburn hair and intelligent brown eyes. She wore a lab coat over business attire, and her badge identified her as Dr. Jessica Chun, Walter Reed Medical Center. "Just taking it all in," Emma replied. First time at one of these symposiums. Dr. Chen smiled sympathetically. "They can be intimidating. I'm Jessica, by the way. Emergency medicine specialist. And you're the community pharmacist everyone's been talking about." Emma's heart sank. "Everyone's been talking about me? Oh, don't worry, it's not necessarily bad. It's just unusual to see someone from your background at this level of symposium. Most attendees are from major institutions or research facilities." Jessica's tone was kind but matter-of-fact. "What made you decide to participate?" Before Emma could answer, a booming voice interrupted their conversation. "Dr. Chen, there you are. I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Morrison from Johns Hopkins." Tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit materialized beside them. His badge read, Dr. Richard Steinberg, Director of Pharmaceutical Research, Georgetown University Medical Center. He barely glanced at Emma before focusing entirely on Jessica. "Dr. Morrison is leading some fascinating research on trauma medication. Delivery systems. Right up your alley, I'd think." Dr. Steinberg gestured toward a distinguished-looking man across the room. "Come, let me introduce you." As they walked away, Dr. Steinberg's voice carried back, "Try to avoid getting pulled into conversations with the ... less qualified attendees. There are always a few who slip through the screening process." Emma stood alone at the bar, her face burning with embarrassment. Around her, the networking continued, but she noticed how conversations seemed to halt when people glanced at her badge, then resume at a lower volume. She wasn't paranoid. She was genuinely being excluded from the informal hierarchy that governed these professional gatherings. She was about to leave when Colonel Webb appeared at her elbow. "Dr. Richardson, how are you finding the symposium so far?" "Educational," Emma replied carefully. "I imagine it's quite different from your usual professional environment." Webb studied her with those sharp gray eyes. "Tell me, in your community pharmacy work, do you ever encounter situations requiring rapid decision-making under pressure?" Emma thought about the countless times she'd identified dangerous drug interactions that doctors had missed, talked people through medical emergencies when the nearest hospital was 30 minutes away, or provided critical pharmaceutical advice during community health crises. More often than you might think, Colonel. Interesting. And how do you handle pressure in general? High-stakes situations where precision matters. There was something in his tone that suggested this wasn't casual conversation. Emma met his gaze steadily. I handle it well. I've always performed better when the stakes are higher. Good to hear. Webb nodded approvingly. Tomorrow's simulation should prove interesting then. We're designing scenarios that will test not just pharmaceutical knowledge, but decision-making speed, precision under pressure, and the ability to maintain focus when others are watching. After Webb moved on, Emma remained at the bar, nursing her club soda and observing the social dynamics around her. She watched Dr. Steinberg hold court near the windows, regaling a circle of admirers with stories of his latest research breakthrough. She noticed how certain attendees seemed to gravitate toward others based on institutional prestige, creating an invisible but clear hierarchy. Near the far wall, she spotted a group of younger attendees, residents, graduate students, and junior researchers who seemed to be having more genuine conversations about their work rather than engaging in professional posturing. Emma considered joining them, but even there she could see the subtle dynamics at play. These were still people from major medical centers and research universities, people who shared a common background she didn't possess. Emma finished her drink and made her way back to her modest hotel room off base. As she prepared for the next day, she reflected on the evening's interactions. The message was clear. She was an outsider, tolerated but not truly welcomed, invited to participate but not expected to excel. She opened her laptop and reviewed her notes for tomorrow's pharmaceutical simulation challenge. Whatever they threw at her, she was determined to prove that expertise didn't depend on prestigious affiliations or institutional backing. She had spent years perfecting her knowledge of drug interactions, dosages, and pharmaceutical chemistry. Tomorrow, that knowledge would have to speak for itself. But as she prepared for bed, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's challenge would involve more than just pharmaceutical expertise. Colonel Webb's questions about pressure and precision suggested something more complex than a standard medical simulation. She thought about the gun safe back in her apartment, about the shooting trophies gathering dust in her closet. For 4 years, she'd kept that part of her life separate from her professional identity, telling herself it wasn't relevant to her work as a pharmacist. Tomorrow, she had a feeling that might change. Emma Richardson, the underestimated community pharmacist, was about to discover that sometimes the skills that define us aren't the ones listed on our business cards. And the Blackwater Military Academy was about to learn that their most dangerous participant was the one they'd already written off. The Medical Simulation Center at Blackwater Academy looked like something from a futuristic hospital. Banks of monitors lined the walls, displaying vital signs from mannequins that breathed, bled, and responded to treatment with unsettling realism. Emma arrived early, hoping to familiarize herself with the equipment before the other participants showed up. She wasn't alone. Dr. Michael Torres from Boston Medical Center was already there, methodically examining each piece of equipment with the confidence of someone accustomed to high-tech medical environments. His badge gleamed with multiple credentials, and even his casual inspection of the simulation setup seemed effortless and professional. Impressive setup, Emma ventured, approaching one of the patient simulators. Dr. Torres glanced up briefly. Standard configuration for military medical training. Though I imagine this is quite different from what you're used to working with. The subtle condescension was becoming familiar. Emma nodded politely and continued her own examination of the equipment. The simulators were indeed more advanced than anything she'd encountered, but the underlying principles remained the same: medical emergencies requiring rapid assessment and treatment. Over the next 20 minutes, the other participants filed In Dr. Steinberg arrived with his usual entourage, immediately commandeering the most advanced simulation station. Dr. Chun offered Emma a friendly nod before joining a group clustered around the central monitoring station. By the time Colonel Webb entered with several other Academy officers, the room had naturally divided into informal teams based on institutional prestige and prior relationships. Emma found herself standing alone near the back of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Webb announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Welcome to day one of our practical assessment program. Today's challenge will test your ability to apply pharmaceutical expertise under realistic emergency conditions." He gestured to the simulation setup around them. "You'll be working in teams of 3, facing a series of escalating medical scenarios. Each scenario will require rapid pharmaceutical intervention, identifying the correct medications, calculating precise dosages, and implementing treatment protocols under time pressure." Emma felt her confidence building. This was exactly the kind of challenge she'd hoped for, pure pharmaceutical knowledge applied under pressure. "However," Webb continued, and something in his tone made Emma's attention sharpen, "there's an additional element to today's assessment. In military medicine, pharmaceutical decisions must often be made in hostile environments, under extreme stress, with lives hanging in the balance." The room had gone completely quiet. To simulate these conditions, each team will complete their pharmaceutical assessments while participating in a precision marksmanship exercise. You'll need to demonstrate both medical expertise and the ability to maintain focus and accuracy under the dual pressure of saving lives and defending position. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Around the room, she could see similar expressions of shock and concern on other participants' faces. This wasn't a standard medical simulation. This was something entirely different. Dr. Steinberg raised his hand. "Colonel, with respect, most medical professionals don't have firearms training. This seems outside the scope of a pharmaceutical symposium." "An excellent point, Dr. Steinberg, which is why we've made firearms participation optional." Webb's smile was cold. "Those who choose not to participate in the marksmanship component will be relegated to observer status for the remainder of the symposium. They're welcome to attend lectures, but won't be eligible for the practical assessments that constitute the bulk of our program." The implications were clear. Participate in the shooting exercise or be effectively excluded from the symposium. Emma's mind raced. Around her, she could hear the beginnings of worried conversations. Several participants looked ready to pack up and leave immediately. Others were trying to negotiate alternative arrangements with the Academy staff. "For those who do choose to participate," Webb continued, "we'll provide basic firearm safety training and supervised instruction. The marksmanship component is designed to test precision and focus, not to endanger anyone. All safety protocols will be strictly enforced." Dr. Torres stepped forward. "What exactly does the marksmanship component involve?" "Precision pistol shooting at various distances, while simultaneously solving pharmaceutical problems. Teams will rotate between medical stations and firing positions. The goal is to maintain accuracy in both domains despite the added stress." Webb's eyes swept the room. "We're looking for individuals who can perform under pressure, maintain precision when it matters, and apply their expertise in unconventional situations." Emma felt something shift inside her chest, not fear, but excitement. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she felt like she might have an advantage rather than a disadvantage. "I need volunteers for the first round," Webb announced. 3-person teams, who's willing to step up? The room fell silent. Emma could see the calculation in everyone's eyes: risk embarrassment and potential danger, or accept reduced status for the remainder of the symposium. Dr. Steinberg cleared his throat. "I think we need more information about the safety protocols before anyone volunteers for something this irregular. Of course, Lieutenant Harris will provide a complete safety briefing." Webb gestured to a woman in military uniform who stepped forward with a clipboard. Anyone interested in participating should report to Range Safety Officer Harris for evaluation and training. Emma found herself walking toward Lieutenant Harris before she'd consciously made the decision. Behind her, she heard Dr. Cheen's voice. "Emma, are you sure about this?" She turned back to see Jessica's concerned expression, along with the surprised faces of several other participants who clearly hadn't expected the small-town pharmacist to volunteer for the most challenging option. "I'm sure," Emma replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Dr. Torres stepped forward as well, followed reluctantly by a young resident from Philadelphia General. Dr. Steinberg remained in place, his expression suggesting he thought they were all making a serious mistake. Lieutenant Harris led them to an adjacent room that looked more like a military briefing facility. "All right, volunteers, let's talk about what you're getting yourselves into. The marksmanship component involves precision pistol shooting at targets placed at 15, 25, and 50 yards. You'll be using standard military sidearms with supervised loading and handling." She gestured to a diagram on the wall showing the range layout. "Safety is our absolute priority. Anyone who demonstrates unsafe handling will be immediately removed from the exercise. The goal isn't to turn you into soldiers, it's to test your ability to maintain precision and focus under stress." Dr. Torres raised his hand. "How does this integrate with the pharmaceutical component?" "You'll rotate between shooting positions and medical stations. At each station, you'll face a pharmaceutical challenge, drug interactions, dosage calculations, treatment protocols, while your team members are engaged in the marksmanship exercise. The noise, time pressure, and knowledge that others are depending on your accuracy creates a stress environment similar to battlefield medicine." Emma listened to the explanation with growing excitement. This wasn't just about shooting, it was about maintaining professional precision under extreme pressure. It was about proving that expertise could survive and even thrive in hostile conditions. "Any questions before we move to basic firearms training?" Lieutenant Harris asked. Dr. Torres looked uncomfortable. "I should mention that I have minimal firearms experience." "That's fine. We'll start with basic safety and handling, then move to supervised shooting instruction." Harris turned to Emma. "Dr. Richardson, any prior firearms experience?" Emma hesitated for a moment. The old Emma, the one who'd spent 4 years being underestimated in Millbrook, wanted to downplay her abilities and avoid drawing attention. But something about this moment felt different. Something about the way Colonel Webb had designed this challenge suggested he suspected there was more to her than met the eye. "Some," she said simply. Lieutenant Harris nodded and led them toward the armory. As they walked, Emma caught sight of Colonel Webb watching from the observation window above. Even from this distance, she could see the slight smile on his face. Emma Richardson was about to discover that sometimes the most important tests are the ones we don't see coming. And sometimes the skills we think we've left behind are exactly what we need to prove who we really are. The question was she ready to stop being underestimated? The answer, she realized with growing certainty, was yes. The Blackwater Academy firing range stretched out before them like a perfectly manicured battlefield. Individual shooting lanes were separated by concrete barriers, each equipped with electronic target systems that could display hits in real time. The morning Virginia air carried the scent of gun oil and the distant sound of military training. Exercises from other parts of the academy. Lieutenant Harris led the 3 volunteers through the range. Safety protocols with military precision. Dr. Torres fumbled slightly with the hearing protection, clearly nervous about handling a firearm. For the first time, the young resident, Dr. Amanda Foster from Philadelphia General, kept glancing around as if expecting to find an exit strategy. Emma stood quietly, listening to the safety briefing with apparent attention while her eyes automatically cataloged the range specifications. 25-yard electronic targets, properly ventilated firing positions, and what appeared to be high-quality competition-grade pistols in the equipment locker. Her fingers itched with muscle memory she'd tried to suppress for 4 years. "Dr. Richardson," Lieutenant Harris called out, interrupting her observations. "You mentioned some prior firearms experience. Care to elaborate?" All eyes turned to Emma. Dr. Torres looked relieved that someone in their group might have relevant skills. Dr. Foster appeared skeptical that the small-town pharmacist could have any meaningful shooting experience. "I was on my college shooting team," Emma replied, keeping her tone casual. "Nothing too serious." "Which college?" Harris asked, making notes on her clipboard. "Johns Hopkins. I shot precision pistol for 4 years. Dr. Foster's eyebrows shot up. "Johns Hopkins has a shooting team?" "Had," Emma corrected. "The program was discontinued after I graduated due to budget cuts." Lieutenant Harris paused in her note-taking. "Did you compete at the collegiate level?" Emma hesitated. The truth was that she'd been nationally ranked, had competed in championship-level tournaments, and had been recruited by the U.S. Olympic development program before choosing pharmacy school instead. But admitting that felt like revealing too much, too fast. "Some regional competitions," she said finally. "Good enough. You can help demonstrate proper stance and grip for the others." Harris handed Emma a blue-handled training pistol made of hard plastic. "Show Dr. Torres and Dr. Foster the basic shooting position." Emma accepted the training weapon and immediately felt 4 years of dormant muscle memory spring to life. Her hands found the correct grip automatically, her stance shifted to the textbook shooting position, and her body aligned with natural precision that made the other participants stare. "Like this," Emma said, demonstrating the proper technique. "Feet shoulder-width apart, slight forward lean, both hands on the grip with your dominant hand high on the backstrap." Dr. Torres attempted to mirror her position but looked stiff and uncomfortable. Dr. Foster managed a reasonable approximation but kept shifting her weight nervously. "Dr. Richardson," Lieutenant Harris observed, "you've clearly had more than casual training. That's a competition-level stance." Emma shrugged. "Good instruction, I suppose." They spent the next hour on basic marksmanship training with actual firearms under strict supervision. Dr. Torres struggled with the fundamentals. His shots scattered across the target with no discernible pattern. Dr. Foster showed slightly better control, but her hands shook visibly between shots. Emma's first shot hit the dead center of the bullseye. Her second shot went through the same hole dot by her 5th shot. Lieutenant Harris had stopped coaching the other participants and was watching Emma with undisguised interest. "Dr. Richardson, I think you can move on to the actual assessment. Your basic skills are clearly adequate." "Adequate?" Emma almost smiled at the understatement. The assessment protocol proved to be exactly as challenging as promised. Teams rotated between 3 stations: a medical simulation requiring rapid pharmaceutical intervention, a marksmanship position, and a coordination station where they had to integrate information from both sources to make treatment decisions. At the first medical station, Emma found herself facing a complex trauma scenario. The simulator displayed symptoms of severe blood loss, cardiac irregularities, and signs of potential drug interactions from battlefield medications already administered. The patient is presenting with tachycardia, hypotension, and altered consciousness. The technician announced. Field medic has already administered morphine and epinephrine. Blood pressure dropping rapidly. What's your pharmaceutical intervention? Emma's mind shifted into the analytical mode she'd perfected over years of pharmacy practice. She scanned the patient data, cross-referenced the medications already given, and quickly identified the problem. The morphine and epinephrine combination is contraindicated in this scenario, she said, her voice steady and professional. The epinephrine is masking the hypotensive effects of what appears to be internal bleeding, while the morphine is depressing respiratory function. I need to counteract the morphine with naloxone and address the underlying hemorrhage with crystalloid fluid replacement and vasopressors. Dosages? The technician pressed Zote. Emma rattled off precise calculations based on the patient's simulated weight and condition, adjusting for the interaction effects and the stress response typical of trauma situations. Her pharmaceutical knowledge, honed over years of real-world application, functioned flawlessly under pressure. Excellent work, the technician noted. Move to your marksmanship station. The shooting position was 50 yards from a standard bullseye target. Dr. Torres was already there, having fired his required 10 shots with results that could charitably be described as hitting the paper. He looked flustered and was rubbing his hands together nervously. Your turn, Dr. Richardson. 10 shots, precision scoring. Take your time. Emma stepped up to the firing line and accepted the loaded pistol from the range officer. Around her she could sense the attention of observers, other symposium participants who had gathered to watch the assessment, academy staff monitoring the exercise, and the electronic scoring system that would record and display each shot in real time. For a moment, she felt the weight of 4 years of suppressed identity pressing down on her. 4 years of being just a pharmacist, of hiding her competitive nature behind a customer service smile, of pretending that precision and excellence weren't core parts of who she was. Emma raised the pistol and found her natural shooting stance. The weight of the weapon felt familiar, comfortable, like greeting an old friend after a long absence. She aligned the sights, controlled her breathing, and felt the unique calm that had always descended on her in moments of competitive pressure. Her first shot punched through the center of the target with a satisfying thud. The electronic scoring system immediately displayed the result. 10.9 out of a possible 10 points, just barely outside the perfect center ring. Nice shot, someone muttered from the observation area. Emma's second shot scored a perfect 10. Her third shot went through the same hole as the second dot by her 7th shot. The observation area had gone completely quiet. Emma was shooting a group so tight that the electronic system was having difficulty distinguishing individual impacts. Shot 8. Perfect 10. Shot 9. Perfect 10. Shot 10. Perfect 10. The final electronic tally flashed on the screen. 10 shots. 9 perfect scores, 1 near-perfect score. Total group size small enough to be covered by a quarter. Emma lowered the pistol and stepped back from the firing line, her expression calm and professional. Around her, the silence stretched for several long seconds. Holy shit, Dr. Foster breathed, then immediately looked mortified at her language. Dr. Torres stared at the target display in disbelief. That's not possible. Not for someone who just does some regional competitions. From the observation area, Emma heard Colonel Webb's voice cutting through the stunned quiet. I think we need to have a conversation, Dr. Richardson. Emma turned to face the assembled group, symposium participants, academy staff and military officers, all staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to suspicion to newfound respect. For the first time in 4 years, Emma Richardson felt like herself again, the small-town pharmacist who'd been dismissed and underestimated, had just demonstrated that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone writes off. And they were only getting started. Colonel Webb's office occupied a corner of the Academy's administrative building, its windows offering a commanding view of the training grounds where cadets moved through formation drills with mechanical precision. Emma sat in one of the leather chairs facing Webb's massive oak desk, acutely aware that this wasn't a casual conversation. Dr. Emma Richardson, Webb began, consulting a file that hadn't been there during their first meeting. Johns Hopkins University, class of 2019, doctorate in pharmacology, summa cum laude. Captain of the university shooting team for 3 consecutive years, National Collegiate Championship winner, Precision Pistol Division. Invited to the U.S. Olympic Development Program, which you declined to pursue graduate studies. Emma remained silent, watching Webb's expression as he continued reading. After graduation, you returned to Millbrook, Virginia, to take over your family's pharmacy following your grandfather's death. No significant competitive shooting since 2019. No advanced medical training beyond your pharmaceutical education. Yet today you demonstrated marksmanship skills that would qualify you for our Academy's Advanced Tactical Medicine program. Webb closed the file and leaned back in his chair. Care to explain why someone with your background has been masquerading as just another small-town pharmacist? I haven't been masquerading as anything, Emma replied carefully. I am a small-town pharmacist. That's my profession and my responsibility. But it's not who you are. Webb's gray eyes studied her intently. I've seen thousands of shooters come through this academy. Dr. Richardson, what you demonstrated today wasn't the result of a college competition shooting. That was the precision of someone who's maintained their skills at a much higher level. Emma felt a flutter of unease. She'd been careful over the years to keep her shooting practice discreet, driving to private ranges hours away from Millbrook, never entering competitions, never drawing attention to skills that didn't fit her carefully. Constructed life as the town's dependable pharmacist. I practice occasionally, she admitted. It helps me relax. Occasionally. Webb's tone suggested he didn't believe her. Dr. Richardson, I'm going to be frank with you. This symposium isn't just about medical education. Blackwater Academy has been contracted by the Department of Defense to identify individuals with unique skill combinations. People who might be valuable in specialized roles that require both medical expertise and tactical capabilities. Emma's blood ran cold. I'm not interested in military service, Colonel. I'm not necessarily talking about military service. There are civilian positions, consulting roles, specialized medical teams that support military operations without requiring enlistment. Webb opened another folder. What I'm talking about are opportunities for people who've been underutilizing their potential. Before Emma could respond, a sharp knock interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Harris entered without waiting for permission, her expression urgent. Colonel, we have a situation with the afternoon assessment. Webb frowned. What kind of situation? Dr. Steinberg has filed a formal complaint about this morning's exercise. He's claiming that Dr. Richardson's performance was artificially enhanced, possibly through illegal stimulants or undisclosed military training. He's demanding drug testing and background verification for all participants. Emma felt her jaw clench. He's claiming I'm on drugs? He's claiming something isn't right about your performance, Harris clarified. He's also suggesting that the Academy is showing favoritism to certain participants to influence the symposium outcomes. Webb's expression darkened. Where is Dr. Steinberg now? Conference room B with about half the symposium participants. He's called an informal meeting to discuss irregularities in the assessment process. I see. Webb stood up, his military bearing suddenly more pronounced. Dr. Richardson, I think it's time you joined that meeting. Let's address Dr. Steinberg's concerns directly. The walk to conference room B felt like a march to execution. Emma could hear raised voices through the closed door before they even reached it. When Webb opened the door, the conversation died instantly. Dr. Steinberg stood at the head of the conference table, his face flushed with indignation. Around the table sat most of the symposium participants, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Emma noticed that Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable, while Dr. Torres appeared genuinely confused about what was happening. Colonel Webb, Dr. Steinberg began immediately. I'm glad you're here. We need to discuss the irregular nature of this morning's assessment and the suspicious performance of certain participants. Please continue, Dr. Steinberg. I'm very interested in your concerns. Steinberg straightened his tie and adopted the tone of someone delivering an academic lecture. It's simply not credible that someone from Dr. Richardson's background could demonstrate the level of marksmanship we witness today. Either she has undisclosed military training that gives her an unfair advantage, or she's using performance-enhancing substances that should disqualify her from the program. Emma felt her temper rising but forced herself to remain calm. Around the table, she could see some participants nodding in agreement with Steinberg's assessment. Furthermore, Steinberg continued, I believe this entire exercise is designed to favor participants with specific backgrounds rather than evaluate pharmaceutical expertise fairly. The inclusion of marksmanship in a medical symposium is highly irregular and suggests an agenda beyond education. Dr. Chun cleared her throat. Dr. Steinberg, with respect, isn't it possible that Dr. Richardson simply has more diverse skills than we initially realized? Diverse skills don't explain that level of precision, Steinberg shot back. I've been in academic medicine for 20 years. I know when something doesn't add up. Webb stepped forward, his presence immediately commanding the room's attention. Dr. Steinberg, you're absolutely right that Dr. Richardson's performance was exceptional. Would you like to know exactly how exceptional? Emma's heart sank. She had a feeling Webb was about to reveal information she'd prefer to keep private. Dr. Richardson isn't just a former college shooting team member, Webb continued. Her competitive record includes multiple national championships, Olympic Development Program participation, and precision scores that rank in the top 1% of civilian shooters in the country. Her pharmaceutical expertise, combined with her marksmanship abilities, represents exactly the kind of skill combination this program was designed to identify. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Emma felt every eye in the room focusing on her with new intensity. Dr. Foster leaned forward. If you knew about her background, why didn't you mention it during the introductions? Because, Webb replied, we wanted to see how participants would perform and interact when they believed they were on equal footing. Dr. Richardson chose not to disclose her full background, which was her prerogative. Steinberg's face grew redder. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The entire exercise has been manipulated from the beginning. How can we trust any of the assessment results if participants aren't being evaluated honestly? Emma finally spoke up. Dr. Steinberg, I didn't lie about anything. I told Lieutenant Harris I had some college shooting experience. I never claimed to be anything other than what I am, a pharmacist from Virginia. But you deliberately minimized your qualifications to gain some kind of advantage, Steinberg accused. What advantage? Emma's voice sharpened. The advantage of being dismissed and underestimated by everyone in this room. The advantage of having my professional credentials questioned at every opportunity. The advantage of being treated like I don't belong here. The room fell silent. Emma realized she was standing now, though she didn't remember getting up from her chair. You want to know why I didn't announce my shooting background? Emma continued, her professional composure finally cracking. Because I've spent 4 years having people assume I'm not qualified for anything more challenging than counting pills. Because every time I walk into a professional setting, people like you decide I don't belong before I even open my mouth. Dr. Torres shifted uncomfortably. Emma, I don't think anyone here meant to, didn't they? Emma turned to face the group. How many of you took one look at my badge, community pharmacy, and decided I was out of my league? How many of you assumed I was here by mistake or as some kind of diversity inclusion? The silence that greeted her questions was answered enough. Webb stepped forward again. If I may interrupt, I think Dr. Richardson has raised an important point about assumptions and qualifications. This symposium was designed to challenge exactly those kinds of preconceptions. Steinberg wasn't backing down. That's all very philosophical, Colonel, but it doesn't address the practical concerns about fair assessment. If Dr. Richardson has elite-level marksmanship training, She should be competing in a different category. What different category would that be, Dr. Steinberg? Webb's tone had gone cold. The category for people who've worked to develop excellence in multiple fields? The category for individuals who've chosen service to their communities over prestigious academic positions? Emma watched the exchange with growing realization that there were undercurrents to this conversation she didn't fully understand. Webb's defense of her seemed to go beyond simple fairness. Dr. Chun spoke up again. If I may ask, Dr. Richardson, why did you stop competing? Your record suggests you could have continued at a professional level. Emma hesitated, then decided that after everything that had been revealed, there was no point in holding back. My grandfather was dying. He needed someone to take over the pharmacy, and there wasn't anyone else. The community needed consistent pharmaceutical services, especially for the elderly residents who couldn't travel to larger towns for their medications. So you gave up a potential Olympic career to run a small-town pharmacy? Dr. Foster asked, her tone suggesting she couldn't comprehend such a choice. I didn't give up anything, Emma replied firmly. I chose where I was needed most. And I've spent 4 years providing excellent pharmaceutical care to people who might not have had access to it otherwise. Webb nodded approvingly. That, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly the kind of decision-making and character assessment this program is designed to evaluate. Not just technical skills, but judgment, priorities, and commitment to service. Steinberg crossed his arms. Very inspiring. But it still doesn't address the fundamental unfairness of the assessment process. Then let me address it directly, Webb said. Dr. Steinberg, you've questioned Dr. Richardson's qualifications and performance. Are you prepared to demonstrate your own abilities under the same conditions? I beg your pardon? The marksmanship component of the assessment. You declined to participate this morning, citing safety concerns and irrelevance to medical practice. But if you believe the exercise is unfair, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate the standard that other participants should be held to? Emma watched Steinberg's face cycle through several expressions before settling on indignant refusal. I'm a researcher, not a marksman. That's exactly my point about the irrelevance of this exercise. But you're questioning the validity of an assessment you refuse to attempt, Webb pointed out. That seems intellectually inconsistent. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emma realized that this confrontation was about more than just her performance. It was about competing philosophies of what constituted valuable skills and worthy professionals. Dr. Chun broke the silence. Perhaps we could focus on the medical components of the assessment. Dr. Richardson's pharmaceutical interventions this morning were impressive regardless of her marksmanship abilities. Were they really impressive? Or do they just seem impressive in comparison to our expectations? Steinberg wasn't giving up. If we're being honest about qualifications and backgrounds, shouldn't we also examine whether a community pharmacist really has the advanced clinical knowledge required for military medical applications? Emma felt something snap inside her. The careful professionalism she'd maintained for years, the diplomatic responses to constant questioning of her competence, the patient tolerance of people who assumed she wasn't qualified, all of it dissolved in a moment of pure, crystalline anger. You want to test my clinical knowledge, Dr. Steinberg? Emma's voice was dangerously quiet. Let's test it. The conference room fell silent as Emma's words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down at high noon. Dr. Steinberg's face shifted from indignant red to a paler shade of uncertainty, while the other participants exchanged glances that ranged from uncomfortable to fascinated. Colonel Webb leaned against the wall, his arms crossed and a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Dr. Richardson, what exactly are you proposing? Emma stepped forward, her pharmaceutical expertise and competitive instincts finally aligning after years of suppression. A direct clinical assessment. Dr. Steinberg questions whether my knowledge is adequate for military medical applications. Let's settle that question definitively. This is ridiculous, Steinberg sputtered. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. My credentials speak for themselves. Do they? Emma's green eyes fixed on him with laser intensity. Because right now, all I see is someone who spent 20 years in academic medicine, questioning the competence of someone who spent 4 years making life or death pharmaceutical decisions every single day. Dr. Chun shifted in her seat. Emma, what kind of assessment are you talking about? Complex case studies. Pharmaceutical problem solving under pressure. Real-world scenarios where theoretical knowledge has to translate into immediate, actionable decisions. Emma's voice grew stronger with each word. The kind of challenges I face every time someone walks into my pharmacy with multiple prescriptions from different doctors who haven't coordinated their treatments. Webb straightened up, his interest clearly piqued. Are you suggesting a head-to-head clinical competition? I'm suggesting we stop talking about qualifications and start demonstrating them. Emma turned to face Steinberg directly. You want to question my competence? Then let's see yours. The room buzzed with tension. Dr. Torres looked like he was watching a tennis match, his head swiveling between Emma and Steinberg. Dr. Foster had pulled out her phone and was discreetly recording, clearly recognizing that something significant was happening. Steinberg adjusted his tie nervously. This is completely inappropriate. I won't be drawn into some kind of theatrical display just to satisfy your wounded ego. My wounded ego? Emma's voice rose slightly. Dr. Steinberg, you've spent the last 30 minutes questioning my qualifications, suggesting I'm either on drugs or lying about my background, and claiming that my performance this morning was somehow fraudulent. But when I suggest we actually test our respective knowledge under identical conditions, suddenly it's inappropriate. Lieutenant Harris, who had been standing quietly by the door, spoke up. Colonel, if both participants are willing, we do have the Advanced Clinical Simulation Suite available. It's designed for exactly this kind of high-pressure medical assessment. Webb nodded slowly. The Combat Medical Simulation Program. Designed to test decision-making under extreme stress with real-world consequences for failure. Now wait just a minute, Doctor. Foster interjected. What kind of real-world consequences are we talking about? Nothing dangerous to the participants, Webb clarified. But the simulations are designed to replicate battlefield medical conditions where incorrect pharmaceutical decisions result in simulated patient deaths. The psychological pressure is significant. Emma felt her pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of challenge she'd been unconsciously preparing for during 4 years of managing complex medication regimens for elderly patients, identifying drug interactions that could be fatal, and making critical pharmaceutical decisions with incomplete information. I'm in, she said without hesitation. All eyes turned to Steinberg, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. This is absurd. I shouldn't have to prove my qualifications to someone with her limited clinical experience. Limited clinical experience? Emma's control finally snapped. Dr. Steinberg, when was the last time you made a pharmaceutical decision that could kill someone if you got it wrong? When was the last time you had to identify a potentially fatal drug interaction with 30 seconds to decide whether to fill a prescription or send someone to the emergency room? She began pacing, her suppressed frustration finally finding its voice. You sit in your academic ivory tower, publishing papers about theoretical pharmaceutical applications while I spend every day making real decisions about real people's lives. Mrs. Henderson comes in with prescriptions from 3 different doctors who don't coordinate their treatments. I have to identify that her new blood pressure medication will interact with her diabetes drug and her arthritis treatment in a way that could cause kidney failure. The room was completely silent now, everyone focused on Emma's passionate outburst. Tommy Foster's acne medication can't be combined with the antidepressant his psychiatrist prescribed, but neither doctor thought to ask about the other's treatments. Sarah Martinez's birth control will be rendered ineffective by the antibiotic her dentist prescribed, but she doesn't know that unless I catch it and explain it to her. Emma stopped pacing and fixed Steinberg with a stare that could have melted steel. Every single day, I make pharmaceutical decisions that directly impact whether people live or die. And I do it with the full knowledge that if I make a mistake, there's no committee to review my decision, no supervisor to catch my error, and no second chance to get it right. Dr. Chun was nodding slowly. She's right, you know. Community pharmacists often catch interactions and dosing errors that could be catastrophic. That's completely different from military medical applications. Steinberg protested, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Is it? Webb interjected. Because from my perspective, the ability to make rapid, accurate pharmaceutical decisions with incomplete information and lives hanging in the balance sounds exactly like what we need in military medical applications. Emma felt a surge of vindication, but she wasn't finished. Dr. Steinberg, you want to know what limited clinical experience looks like. Limited clinical experience is spending 20 years writing research papers about drugs you've never prescribed to patients you've never met for conditions you've only seen in textbooks. Now see here, Steinberg began. Emma cut him off. I've memorized the pharmaceutical profiles of over 3,000 medications. I can calculate dosing adjustments for renal function, hepatic impairment, and drug interactions in my head while simultaneously counseling a patient on side effects and drug timing. I've identified contraindications that emergency room doctors missed because they were focused on trauma response rather than pharmaceutical interactions. She turned to address the entire room. But apparently, because I chose to use those skills to serve a small community rather than publish papers about them, they don't count as real qualifications. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Dr. Foster had stopped recording, apparently caught up in the intensity of Emma's defense of her profession. Webb broke the silence. Dr. Steinberg, Dr. Richardson has issued a direct challenge to test clinical knowledge under simulated combat medical conditions. The assessment would be identical for both participants. Same scenarios, same time pressure, same consequences for incorrect decisions. Are you willing to participate? Steinberg looked around the room, clearly calculating the political implications of refusing. To back down now would essentially validate Emma's accusations about his lack of practical experience. But to accept would mean risking public failure in front of colleagues who respected his academic reputation. What would be the parameters of this assessment? He asked carefully. Lieutenant Harris consulted her tablet. The Combat Medical Simulation Suite includes 12 escalating scenarios. Each scenario presents complex pharmaceutical challenges with multiple potential interventions. Participants have limited time to make decisions, and incorrect choices result in simulated patient casualties. The scenarios are designed to test rapid decision-making, drug interaction identification, dosage calculations under pressure, and the ability to prioritize treatments when resources are limited, Webb added. It's the same assessment we use for advanced military medical personnel. Emma nodded. Sounds perfect. When do we start? Dr. Torres cleared his throat. If I may ask, what happens to the winner of this competition? Webb's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say that exceptional performance in our assessments opens doors to opportunities that aren't available through traditional academic channels. Emma felt a chill of anticipation mixed with apprehension. She was beginning to understand that Colonel Webb's interest in her went beyond simple professional curiosity. There was something larger at play here, some opportunity or position that required exactly her combination of skills. But first, she had to prove that her pharmaceutical knowledge was as exceptional as her marksmanship. Steinberg straightened his shoulders. Very well. I accept the challenge. But I want it understood that I'm doing this under protest, and I maintain that this entire symposium has been conducted in an irregular manner. Noted, Webb replied dryly. Lieutenant Harris, please prepare the simulation suite. Dr. Richardson. Dr. Steinberg, you have 30 minutes to review the equipment and familiarize yourselves with the interface. The assessment will begin at 1400 hours. As the group began to disperse, Dr. Chun approached Emma. Are you sure about this? Steinberg may be arrogant, but he does have extensive pharmaceutical knowledge. Emma nodded, feeling more confident than she had since arriving at the academy. Jessica, I've been sure about my pharmaceutical knowledge for years. It's everything else I've been uncertain about. Dr. Foster lingered as well. Emma, I have to ask, why now? You could have revealed your background earlier and avoided all this confrontation. Emma considered the question as she gathered her materials. Because I'm tired of being underestimated. I'm tired of having my qualifications questioned, based on where I work instead of what I know. And I'm tired of people like Steinberg assuming that academic credentials automatically translate to practical competence. She paused at the doorway. But mostly, I'm tired of hiding who I really am to make other people comfortable with their assumptions about who I should be. As Emma walked toward the simulation center, she felt a familiar calm settling over her. It was the same feeling she'd experienced on the firing range that morning, the certainty that came from finally being able to demonstrate skills she'd spent years developing and perfecting. Dr. Richard Steinberg was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who's been underestimated for so long that they've had time to become truly exceptional. And Emma Richardson was about to discover whether 4 years of real-world pharmaceutical practice had prepared her for the most important test of her professional life. The simulation center awaited, and with it, the chance to prove once and for all that excellence doesn't depend on prestigious addresses or academic pedigrees. It depends on skill, dedication, and the courage to perform when everything is on the line. The Combat Medical Simulation Center hummed with electronic life as Emma and Dr. Steinberg took their positions at identical workstations. Banks of monitors displayed vital signs from multiple simulated patients, while pharmaceutical databases and drug interaction checkers glowed on secondary screens. The air crackled with tension as the assembled symposium participants, academy staff, and military observers settled into the viewing gallery above. Emma's fingers moved across the interface with practiced efficiency, her years of pharmacy management software experience translating seamlessly to the military medical system. Beside her, Steinberg struggled slightly with the unfamiliar controls, his academic background not including extensive hands-on experience with rapid-access pharmaceutical databases. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Webb's voice echoed through the facility's intercom system. You're about to witness a combat medical pharmaceutical assessment. Both participants will face identical scenarios requiring immediate life or death decisions. Incorrect pharmaceutical interventions will result in simulated patient casualties. Lieutenant Harris stood at the control station, her fingers poised over the scenario activation controls. Dr. Richardson, Dr. Steinberg, are you ready to begin? Emma felt the familiar calm descend over her, the same focused clarity she experienced during her most challenging days at the pharmacy. Ready. Steinberg adjusted his glasses nervously. Ready. Scenario 1. Mass casualty event. Multiple patients with varying pharmaceutical needs. You have limited supplies and must prioritize treatments. Begin. The first simulation exploded across Emma's screens. 6 patients, each with different injuries, medication histories, and pharmaceutical requirements. She had 45 seconds to triage pharmaceutical interventions and allocate limited drug supplies. Patient 1. Severe blood loss, already administered morphine by field medics, showing signs of shock. Patient 2. Chest trauma, difficulty breathing, possible pneumothorax, allergic to penicillin-based antibiotics. Patient 3. Head injury, unconscious, unknown medication history, requiring immediate pharmaceutical intervention to reduce intracranial pressure. Emma's mind shifted into overdrive, processing multiple pharmaceutical decision trees simultaneously. She allocated morphine alternatives for patient 1 to avoid respiratory depression, selected non-penicillin antibiotics for patient 2's inevitable infection risk, and calculated precise dosing for mannitol to address patient 3's brain. Swelling. Her fingers flew across the interface, making pharmaceutical selections and dosage calculations with the speed and precision of someone who'd spent years making similar decisions under pressure. Within 30 seconds, she'd completed her interventions and submitted her treatment plan. Beside her, Steinberg was still analyzing patient 2's pharmaceutical requirements. Time, Lieutenant Harris announced. The results flashed on the main display screen visible to all observers. Emma's pharmaceutical interventions had resulted in 6 successful treatments with optimal drug utilization. Steinberg's incomplete assessment had resulted in 3 simulated patient deaths due to delayed pharmaceutical intervention. A murmur rippled through the observation gallery. Dr. Chun leaned forward in her seat, clearly impressed by Emma's rapid decision-making. Scenario 2, Harris continued without pause. Field hospital, limited resources, complex drug interactions. You have 60 seconds. This scenario was even more challenging. Emma found herself managing pharmaceutical care for 8 patients, each with complex medication histories and potential drug interactions that could prove fatal if not properly managed. Patient 4 had been treated with multiple antibiotics by different medical teams, creating a dangerous combination that could cause cardiac arrhythmias. Patient 5 was on multiple psychiatric medications that could interact catastrophically with standard pain management protocols. Patient 6 presented with symptoms suggesting drug-seeking behavior, but also genuine trauma requiring pharmaceutical intervention. Emma's pharmaceutical knowledge, honed by years of identifying drug interactions for elderly patients with complex medication regimens, functioned flawlessly under pressure. She identified the antibiotic interaction, selected alternative pain management for the psychiatric patient, and developed a treatment protocol for patient 6 that addressed both pain management and potential substance abuse concerns. Steinberg, clearly flustered by the rapid pace and incomplete information, made several pharmaceutical selections that would have resulted in serious adverse reactions. Time. Results. Emma's intervention saved all 8 patients with no adverse pharmaceutical reactions. Steinberg's decisions resulted in 4 simulated deaths and 2 cases of severe pharmaceutical complications. The observation gallery was no longer murmuring. They were watching in stunned silence as the community pharmacist systematically outperformed the prestigious academic researcher. Scenario 3, chemical weapons exposure. Unknown agents, multiple casualties, limited pharmaceutical countermeasures. 90 seconds. This was the most complex scenario yet. Emma's screens filled with data from 12 patients exposed to unknown chemical agents. Symptoms ranged from respiratory distress to neurological complications, and she had to identify likely chemical agents based on symptom patterns, then select appropriate pharmaceutical countermeasures from limited supplies. Emma's mind raced through her knowledge of toxicology and pharmaceutical antidotes. The symptom pattern suggested organophosphate exposure, likely a nerve agent. She quickly identified patients who would benefit from atropine administration, calculated dosages based on symptom severity, and allocated pralidoxime to prevent permanent neurological damage. But there was a complication. 3 patients showed symptoms inconsistent with organophosphate exposure. Their presentation suggested exposure to a different agent entirely, possibly a blister agent or respiratory irritant requiring completely different pharmaceutical intervention. Emma made a rapid decision that would have seemed reckless to anyone watching, but which demonstrated the kind of split-second pharmaceutical judgment that separated competent practitioners from exceptional ones. She divided her limited antidote supplies based on her assessment of 2 different chemical agents, treating the majority for organophosphate exposure, while providing alternative treatments for the patients with different symptom patterns. It was a decision that required absolute confidence in her pharmaceutical knowledge and symptom interpretation skills. Steinberg, overwhelmed by the complexity and multiple variables, defaulted to treating all patients identically, assuming a single chemical agent was responsible for all casualties. The results were devastating for Steinberg's ego and reputation. Emma's complex pharmaceutical assessment had correctly identified 2 different chemical agents and provided appropriate treatments, resulting in the survival of all 12 patients. Steinberg's assumption of a single agent had resulted in 9 simulated deaths from inappropriate pharmaceutical treatment. The observation gallery erupted in whispered conversations. Dr. Foster was frantically taking notes, clearly recognizing that she was witnessing something extraordinary. Even Dr. Torres, who had struggled with the basic marksmanship exercise that morning, seemed to understand that Emma's pharmaceutical performance was at a level far beyond what anyone had expected. But Emma wasn't finished. "Colonel Webb," she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the simulation center, "I'd like to request an additional challenge." Webb's eyebrows rose. "What kind of additional challenge, Dr. Richardson?" Emma stood and faced the observation gallery, her green eyes blazing with competitive fire that had been suppressed for far too long. "I want to complete a pharmaceutical assessment while simultaneously demonstrating marksmanship precision. The kind of dual-task performance that your tactical medical teams would actually face in combat situations." The gallery fell completely silent. Even Steinberg stopped his frantic review of the simulation results to stare at Emma in disbelief. "Dr. Richardson," Webb said slowly, "that's never been attempted before. The cognitive load of complex pharmaceutical decision-making combined with precision marksmanship would be ... extraordinary." "Exactly." Emma's smile was sharp as a blade. "I want to demonstrate that practical pharmaceutical expertise isn't just about academic knowledge. It's about maintaining precision and focus under any conditions, with any distractions, when lives depend on getting it right." Lieutenant Harris looked to Colonel Webb for guidance. The request was unprecedented, potentially dangerous, and far beyond the normal parameters of the assessment program. "What specifically are you proposing?" Webb asked. Emma walked to the center of the simulation floor, commanding the attention of everyone in the facility. "A complex pharmaceutical scenario requiring rapid decision-making and precise calculations, completed while engaged in precision marksmanship at increasing distances. Each pharmaceutical decision must be made and implemented while maintaining shooting accuracy." Dr. Chun leaned over the gallery railing. "Emma, that's insane. The cognitive load alone could be dangerous." "The cognitive load is what I've been managing every day for 4 years," Emma replied. "Mrs. Henderson needs her blood pressure medication adjusted while I'm counseling Mr. Collins about his heart medication interactions while simultaneously verifying that Sarah Martinez's prescription won't interact with her other treatments while answering Dr. Wilson's questions about drug availability while managing inventory and insurance authorizations." She paused, letting that sink in. "The only difference is that instead of managing multiple conversations and decisions simultaneously, I'll be managing pharmaceutical decisions and marksmanship simultaneously." Steinberg finally found his voice. "This is completely outside the parameters of pharmaceutical assessment. It's a publicity stunt." Emma turned to face him directly. "Dr. Steinberg, you've spent this entire day questioning my qualifications, my background, and my competence. You've suggested I'm either on drugs or fraudulently representing my abilities. You've claimed that community pharmacists don't possess the advanced knowledge required for complex medical applications." Her voice grew stronger. "So let me demonstrate exactly what Community pharmacists are capable of when we stop being underestimated and start being challenged. Colonel Webb exchanged glances with Lieutenant Harris, then made a decision that would change Emma's life forever. Dr. Richardson, if you're absolutely certain you want to attempt this assessment, we'll accommodate your request. But I want to be clear about what you're proposing. This would be a demonstration of capabilities that would qualify you for our most advanced tactical medical positions. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. The implications of Webb's statement were clear. This wasn't just about proving her pharmaceutical competence. This was about demonstrating qualifications for opportunities she'd never imagined. I understand, Colonel, and I'm ready. The next 30 minutes transformed the simulation center into something resembling a combat zone. The pharmaceutical workstation was repositioned to provide clear lines of sight to shooting positions at 15, 25, and 50 yards. Electronic targets were activated, and precision scoring systems came online. Emma was fitted with communications equipment that would allow her to receive pharmaceutical scenarios while maintaining her shooting position. The setup was unprecedented, complex, and designed to test the absolute limits of human multitasking ability. Dr. Richardson, Webb's voice came through her earpiece. You'll face 3 pharmaceutical scenarios of increasing complexity. Each scenario must be completed while maintaining precision marksmanship at the designated distances. Any pharmaceutical error or significant decrease in shooting accuracy will result in immediate termination of the assessment. Emma took her position at the first shooting station, 15 yards from a standard precision target. In her hands was the same military sidearm she'd used that morning, but now the weight felt different, heavier with the significance of what she was attempting to prove. Begin Scenario Alpha, Harris announced. Emma's earpiece crackled to life with the details of a complex pharmaceutical emergency. A field hospital treating multiple casualties with overlapping medication requirements and limited drug supplies. She had to calculate dosages, identify interactions, and allocate resources while simultaneously maintaining precision fire at the 15-yard target. Her first shot hit dead center while she was mentally processing the pharmaceutical requirements of patient 1. Her second shot punched through the same hole, while she calculated morphine alternatives for patient 2. By her 5th shot, she had completed the pharmaceutical assessment and submitted her treatment protocol without a single shooting error. Scenario Alpha complete. Perfect pharmaceutical intervention. Perfect marksmanship score. Advanced to 25 yards. The observation gallery was now completely silent. Every person in the facility was focused on Emma's unprecedented demonstration of multitasking precision. Begin Scenario Beta. The second pharmaceutical challenge was exponentially more complex. Chemical weapons exposure with unknown agents, multiple casualties with varying symptoms, and the need to identify appropriate antidotes from limited supplies, all while maintaining precision fire at 25 yards. Emma's mind entered a state of hyperconcentration she'd never experienced before. Her pharmaceutical knowledge functioned automatically, processing complex decision trees while her muscle memory maintained perfect shooting form. She identified organophosphate exposure patterns while placing shots in a group smaller than a quarter. She calculated atropine dosages while maintaining breathing control that kept her shots perfectly centered. Shot after shot, pharmaceutical decision after pharmaceutical decision, Emma demonstrated a level of multitasking precision that bordered on the superhuman. Scenario Beta complete. Perfect pharmaceutical intervention. Perfect marksmanship score. Advanced to 50 yards. Dr. Steinberg was staring in open-mouthed disbelief. Around the gallery, military officers were taking notes and making phone calls. Even Dr. Chun looked stunned by what she was witnessing. Begin Scenario Gamma. The final scenario was designed to break even exceptional performers. A mass casualty event with 15 patients, each requiring complex pharmaceutical intervention, multiple drug interactions to identify and avoid, limited supplies requiring precise allocation decisions, and unknown medication histories requiring rapid assessment and treatment protocol development. All while maintaining precision. Marksmanship at 50 yards, a distance where even minor tremors or concentration lapses would result in missed shots. Emma raised her weapon and felt time slow down around her. This was the moment that would define not just her performance at the symposium, but her entire professional identity. This was her chance to prove that excellence knows no boundaries, that competence transcends institutional prestige, and that sometimes the most capable person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. Her first shot at 50 yards hit dead center while she processed the pharmaceutical requirements of patients 1 through 3. Her second shot went through the same hole, while she identified a potentially fatal drug interaction between patients 4 and 5's treatment protocols. By her 10th shot, she had successfully managed pharmaceutical care for 8 patients while maintaining perfect marksmanship accuracy. By her 10th shot, she had completed the most complex pharmaceutical assessment in the simulation program's history while shooting a group that could be covered by a silver dollar. At 50 yards. Scenario Gamma complete. Lieutenant Harris's voice was barely above a whisper as she announced the results. 15 patients successfully treated with optimal pharmaceutical interventions and 0 adverse reactions. 15 shots fired, 15 perfect bullseyes total. Group size 1.2 inches at 50 yards. The simulation center fell silent except for the gentle hum of electronic equipment and the distant sound of Emma's spent shell casings rolling across the concrete floor. Colonel Webb descended from the observation gallery, his expression unreadable. Behind him followed a group of military officers Emma didn't recognize, their uniforms bearing insignia that suggested very high rank and specialized assignments. Dr. Emma Richardson, Webb said formally, on behalf of the United States Department of Defense, I'd like to offer you a position with our most classified tactical medical unit. Your demonstrated capabilities in pharmaceutical expertise and precision performance under pressure represent exactly the skill combination we've been seeking for operations that I cannot discuss in this setting. Emma looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. Dr. Steinberg appeared to be in some form of shock. Dr. Chun was smiling with genuine admiration. Dr. Foster was still frantically taking notes, clearly recognizing that she'd witnessed something that would be talked about for years. But what Emma saw most clearly was the respect in every face looking back at her. The dismissive assumptions, the questioning of her qualifications, the suggestions that she was just a pharmacist. All of it had been swept away by a demonstration of excellence that spoke louder than any credentials or institutional affiliations. Colonel Webb, Emma said finally, I'm honored by the offer. But I have a pharmacy to run and a community that depends on me. Webb smiled. Dr. Richardson, the position would allow you to serve both your community and your country. You'd maintain your pharmacy operations while providing consulting services for specialized missions requiring your unique combination of skills. Think of it as expanding your practice to include the most challenging pharmaceutical cases imaginable. Emma considered the offer, thinking about the gun safe in her apartment, the shooting trophies gathering dust in her closet, and the 4 years she'd spent hiding her true capabilities behind a customer service smile. What exactly would this position involve? Pharmaceutical support for tactical medical teams in high-risk environments. Training military medical personnel in advanced pharmaceutical applications. Consulting on cases that require the kind of rapid decision-making and precision performance you've demonstrated today. Webb's expression grew serious. Dr. Richardson, there are situations where the difference between success and failure, between life and death, comes down to having someone who can make perfect pharmaceutical decisions while maintaining perfect precision under perfect pressure. Emma thought about Mrs. Henderson questioning her competence. about the countless customers who doubted her qualifications, about the assumptions people made when they saw her small-town pharmacy credentials. Then she thought about the feeling of perfect performance under pressure, about the satisfaction of demonstrating excellence when it mattered most, about the opportunity to use all of her capabilities rather than hiding half of them. "I accept," Emma said simply. The observation gallery erupted in applause. Dr. Chun was the first to reach the simulation floor, pulling Emma into a hug that spoke of professional respect and genuine friendship. "Emma," she said quietly, "I don't think any of us really understood who you were until today." Emma smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "That's okay, Jessica. I'm not sure I understood who I was either." As the crowd dispersed and the paperwork began, Emma found herself standing alone in the simulation center, looking at the targets that bore witness to her perfect performance. 25 shots at the morning assessment, 15 shots during the final demonstration, 40 perfect shots that had transformed her from an underestimated community pharmacist into someone whose capabilities commanded respect and opened doors to opportunity she'd never imagined. But more than that, they were 40 shots that had finally allowed Emma Richardson to stop hiding who she really was. 6 months later, Emma still opened Richardson Family Pharmacy every morning at 8:00, still filled prescriptions for Mrs. Henderson and counseled Sarah Martinez about her medications. But now she also traveled regularly to secure facilities where she trained military medical teams and consulted on pharmaceutical protocols for operations she couldn't discuss. The sign on her pharmacy door still read, "Richardson Family Pharmacy," serving the community since 1952. But Emma had added a small plaque below it, "Excellence knows no boundaries." Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room, the most qualified expert at the table, the most capable professional in the building, is the one everyone assumes is just something ordinary. Emma Richardson had learned to stop letting people's assumptions define her limitations, and the world was a more precise, more excellent place because of it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.